Hello friends, welcome to e-learning port again. So we are discussing about interview questions which is frequently asked in many companies interviews. So in our last video we discussed about constructor chaining using this keyword as well as super keyword. So today we are going to discuss some you can say trickiest questions which is generally asked in many companies either in objective form. If you are in, if suppose you are giving Java objective level interview round, objective level questions answers, in that type of questions as well it can be asked, as well as it can be asked in face to face interviews. Okay, so this trickiest question will be related to super keyword, or you can say constructor chaining. Okay, so questions will be like, you will be given one scenario, one line of code. Okay, so the line of code will be like this: class, if suppose A, and you have a constructor, or if suppose you are not defining any constructor, or you are defining a constructor public A. Okay, now there is one more class. So if suppose here you are writing system dot out dot println of super, and you have one more class, class B, which extends A, and you have a constructor in B as well, public B. Okay, here you are writing system dot out dot println of child or derived, okay, something, and then you are writing something like super to do the constructor chain. So the question will be, what will be output of this particular program? You might be thinking that it should be this particular program's output should be child, and then it had called super, it should be super. If you are not aware what is the behavior here, okay, so the answer will be, for this answer will be something like compilation phase. Compilation phase. This won't be able to be compiled. Why? Because there is a rule. There is a rule behind this super constructor and all. So this will be question. This will be output with comparison. This won't even compile. There won't be any output. Rather, it will, the comparison will be failed. The compilation phase for this particular program. Why? So I will explain you that. What is the trick? Sorry. What is the trick behind this one? The trick is that whenever super constructor is being called, using super in some child class constructor, the super call should be the first statement. Not the second. As for example, what is the first statement here? First statement is system.out.println, and then you have got super. This is not possible in Java. Why? Because as per the rules, this super keyword should always be, this super constructor should always be called first in constructor chaining. So when it will give output, when you make something like, I'll delete it. When you make something like first super and then SOP, that means system.out.println, something like that. Then compilation will also happen, and output will also come. Why? Because this is the rule, mandatory rule. Always super constructor should be called in first statement. of the child constructor. So this is the child class constructor, this is the parent class. You are calling parent class constructor the default constructor one. Then always remember this super keyword should always be the first statement. Okay, now this is clear. Okay, we'll cover few trickiest questions are there. We will cover those as fast as possible. Okay, now there will be one more question, something like this. What is the output? What is the output? When I'm making something like b equal to new b. Suppose this is public static void main. From there b, so you are creating an object of the b. Okay, and sorry, I won't explain this one, I will focus directly on this one. Okay, so what is the output? Definitely you might be thinking, many of you might be thinking the output should be child. Okay, many of you might be thinking the output should be child, but it's wrong. Output will be super and then child. Now you might be surprised why? Because always remember, whenever there is some inheritance code or there is some inheritance scenario, always from the child class constructors, the parent class default constructor is called by default. That means in hidden row, means in hidden form, this super keyword is there. Super constructor call is there in hidden form. It's not visible. Even though if you remove this, by default, whenever the constructor is called here, this constructor will be calling the parent class constructor using the invisible super constructor call. Okay, so always remember, any constructor, even though if it's a parameterized constructor, even though if it is parameterized constructor, b int n, even it is parameterized constructor, the first default call will be super. This is the first statement by default. You write this or don't write, this will be the by default call from any constructor of child class. Okay, I hope now this is also clear. The concept is very clear. From the child class constructor, always the first statement is super, and even though if you don't write super, means if you don't call the super constructor, by default super class default constructor will be called. Always remember, super class default constructor. So this is the constructor, non-parameterized. You are not passing any parameters here. Then only this is the default constructor. So always remember, from the child class, always parent class default constructor is called with the help of super keyword, means with help of super and then method annotation like bracket, it always calls the parent class constructor, the default constructor. Remember, parent class default constructor. Okay, I will note it down at last. Okay, there is one more scenario for this one, that is also called trickiest questions. Okay, let me explain that. Suppose you are passing here some super parameterized, means para I have written simply parameterized constructor. You have written in parent class, you have written a parameterized constructor. Okay, parameterized constructor, and you have something here, SOP of child. PSVM of string R B equal to new P. Now there will be one more question like this. What is the output? In parent class there will be parameterized constructor. In child class there may be any constructor, parameterized or default constructor. Now in child class we are printing something. In parent class parameterized constructor as well we are printing something. What is the output? This is also very tricky question. Okay, you must be thinking, if you don't know about that, you must be thinking that again, as I explained earlier, the output should be super para and then child. No, wrong. The output, there won't be any output, simply compilation phase. I specifically told in my last statements that always the child class constructor calls parent class default constructor as the first statement. Either you write or you don't write as the first statement. So parent class default constructor, and I have already explained in my last videos that as soon as you provide some parameterized constructor, the default constructor is destroyed. That means as soon as you have provided this one, there is no constructor like this, the default provided. As soon as you write any constructor in class, the default constructor is gone. That means this class is having only one constructor, parameterized constructor, and as per the behavior, this class constructor will be looking for super default constructor, and this default constructor is not there as well. This default constructor is not there. So this will always fail. So this is the third point. Okay. The child class constructor always calls parent class default constructor. So default constructor must be there. If you don't want to go for the default constructor, go for the parameterized constructor. You write it, because by default it won't come. By default constructor calls come. So you write the super of 10. Then only comparison will be successful. Okay. So these are the trickiest questions related to super constructor call, super keyword, or you can say in constructor chaining. Okay, so now let's note down everything. So first point, what I explained first point. So the first point is that sorry, the child class will always look for parent class constructor, means, and the first line should always be the parent constructor call. That means the first rule is that child class constructor should always have parent class constructor call, or I can write it directly, parent class constructor call as first statement. As first statement. That means, which I explained, the super of default or anything, super of any parameterized constructor or anything. Okay. So child class constructor should always have, sorry for this mistake, should always have parent class constructor call as first statement. Always remember. Okay. Second is that from child class constructor by default parent class default constructor is called by default constructor parent classes default constructor. Always remember, default constructor is called. So with this statement you can also justify that there must be default constructor in the parent class. Okay, these two statements are enough to explain all those three scenarios, three trickiest questions. I hope you enjoyed this video and you liked it and you understood, because my first aim is you should understand this. If you are not able to understand anything, you can comment in comment box. I will definitely reply as soon as possible. Okay, and please like, subscribe and share my video if you liked it. So for the time being, thank you very much for watching my video, the interview series. Thank you.